Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making oatmeal muffins. This is a recipe that comes from America's Test Kitchen. My sister in Canada sent me a link to the video and I watched it. I thought it was interesting how they were doing them. It's not the normal way of making the muffins, and for this they recommend using what they call old-fashioned rolled oats. The nearest I can get to that, I think, and it may well be the very same thing, is old-fashioned porridge oats, and certainly the oat flakes are larger than the quick porridge, so I think that will be okay. And what they actually do with them is to toast them with some butter in a pan, and then they grind them into an oatmeal. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll go through the ingredients first of all. I have 250 grams of plain flour, 170 grams of old-fashioned rolled oats, 265 grams of light brown sugar, 2 medium eggs, 90 millilitres of melted butter, 30 grams of butter, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. That's for the muffins, and then we have a lovely topping, and for the topping I have another 45 grams of rolled oats. I have 65 grams of light brown sugar. I have 48 grams of plain flour, 30 millilitres of unsalted butter melted, 40 grams of chopped pecans, and I'm using the zest of an orange. In the America's Test Kitchen one they used ground cinnamon, but I use cinnamon quite a lot, so I thought as a change, and because my family are getting slightly fed up with cinnamon, I think, I've decided to put the zest of an orange in to give that topping a flavour. So we'll get on straight away with the toasting of the oats. So you put your 30 grams or 30 millilitres of butter into a pan and you let it melt. So that butter's just about melted, so I'm going to pour in the oats. Spread them around, keep stirring all the time. That's going to mix the butter in with the oats. And the recipe says it should give off a sort of popcorn flavour as they toast. Well, I guess that's because I'm not entirely sure that popcorn would smell of anything unless you were doing it in butter, and then it would smell of the butter, and this indeed does smell of the butter. And then as the oats begin to toast, they should give a sort of nutty type aroma, I think, to the eventual muffins. Okay, so these oats seem to have toasted quite nicely. Some are still a little bit pale, but I think that's fine. So we'll take them off the heat. And what I'm going to do is, I'm actually just going to, for the time being, pour them into this large bowl. And then we're going to process them. Now I could do this in the food processor, but I'm actually going to do it in this little handheld one. I think that will be fine. I've got a couple of pieces there that aren't in. And then I'm going to put it on a high speed. And pulse it. That seems perfect. We have our oats ground down very nicely. I'm going to pop those into the bowl. And into that I'm going to add the 250 grams of flour, the 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Sprinkle that over. And I'm just going to use a whisk to mix all of those together. Right, so onto the wet ingredients. I'm going to take my 265 grams of light brown sugar. Now I've actually made an effort to break this down a little bit, but just to make sure we do it properly, I'm going to pour in the 90 millilitres of melted butter and just work that until it's combined. Doesn't take long at all, you see. But if you have any lumps in the sugar, this will help to break them down. Right. So having got the butter mixed in with the sugar, we're going to pour in our eggs. 2 medium eggs. In the US they would be large eggs because you have different size charts there. And 420 millilitres of milk. I'm going to mix all of that together. I'll use my whisk to do that. And there was another tip that the American Kitchen gave on making these muffins, and it was all to do with whisking the flour and the dry ingredients into the wet rather than stirring them in, because oats, even when ground, they tell me, have a tendency to clump. In muffins, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all, but that's what they said. So, having got the wet ingredients, I'm going to take about half of the flour and oat mix, and I'm going to whisk that in, and the way they say to do that is to scrape from the bottom and then bang it like that. Then pour the rest of the flour and oat mixture in. And continue along the same vein until you have it all mixed in. And you keep on until there's no flour visible when you stir. And that's it. Now, that's still not ready to go into the muffin tins. And the reason for that is that the coarseness of the ground oatmeal doesn't absorb the moisture as quickly as the flour does. So you now need to leave this batter for about 20 minutes and allow it to completely absorb properly, so that the oatmeal is all nice and moist as well. And then we can put it in the muffin tins and bake it. And at that point, we're going to make our topping. I could do the topping now, but I'd rather leave it till later in case it starts to go a bit soggy. So I'll be back with you in 20 minutes and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so it's still not quite 30 minutes, but this has begun to thicken up as the oatmeal that we ground absorbs the liquids. So let's get on with making the topping. Now what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to put the sugar into the bowl, and then I'm going to put the orange zest in, and I'm going to stir it. What I want to do, the sugar will actually draw some of the orange flavour out of the zest, the oils out of the zest, so it'll spread more evenly through the topping if I mix those together first. And then the other dry ingredients, so the oats, the plain flour and the chopped pecans. And I didn't chop the pecans too finely, but because you want a little bit of crunch. You'll get some crunch from the oats as well, of course. Mix those all together. And then pour the batter in. Now that batter has begun to set just a little bit, but it should still be okay. Use a spatula to scrape the last of the batter out. And then we'll mix that together. I'll just set that aside. Now, I've greased this muffin pan with baking spray. I've used baking spray because it contains the grease that you want, but it also contains some flour. And usually I would use paper cups to line the muffin tins, but on America's Test Kitchen they didn't, so I'm going to do it like that. So we take our batter and we fill the muffin cup just about to the top. And this ice cream scoop that I'm using is about 120 millilitres, half a cup. Okay, so I've dished that into the muffin tins, and now I'm just going to sprinkle this on the top. And I'm just going to do a bit more there. I'm going to bake those in the preheated oven. The oven is at 190 Celsius or 170 Celsius with a fan, or 375 Fahrenheit. And I'm going to bake them for between 18 and 25 minutes. I need to test them with a skewer before I take them out to make sure that they're cooked. But then I'll take them out and let them cool, and then I'll be back with you. Well, I've taken the muffins out of the oven. They've only just come out, so they've got to cool down for a few minutes before I can remove them from the tin. But I thought I would show them to you. They've risen very nicely. They've spread slightly more than the ones did on America's Test Kitchen, but I converted their weight measurements for the ingredients into metric, and it's not always easy to do an exact conversion. But I think they look quite good, so I'm hopeful that when we turn them out, they're going to look good and taste very good. So I'll be back with you shortly and we'll have a taste. Okay, so I've let these cool down now for about 15 minutes, and I've taken them out of the muffin tin, and I'm quite impressed with them. I think they look quite nice. I just break one open so you can see inside. Very nice and moist. And they have a very nice flavour to them, the oats. And then with the topping, it's crunchy. And just that little hint of orange. So, I'm very pleased with those. I will try them again with cinnamon at some stage in the future, but I'll leave it a little while. But these certainly have turned out very well indeed. I think the one tip I would have given would be that after I've let the batter rest, before I scoop it into the muffin tin, I would give it one more final stir to make sure that if it's not thickened as much at the base, we're actually getting all the moisture spread evenly throughout. But other than that, I think they went very well indeed. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click on the subscribe button as well, so that you can see when I post future videos. And I'll be back with you soon with another one. And so until then, happy baking.